In this video, we will discuss about different types of laws and regulations that are issued by the regulatory authorities of the country, which the financial institutions are required to comply with. So, first of all, we have the anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism related laws and regulations. So before discussing this regulation and law, if you are new to this channel, I would request you to please subscribe it. And we upload the governance, risk management and compliance related conceptual videos on this channel for education purposes. So please subscribe this channel. Now let's discuss what is AML CFT laws and regulations. Anti-money laundering related laws and regulations are issued by the central bank or the state bank of the country, which the financial institutions such as banks are required to comply with. And the purpose of issuing the AML CFT laws and regulations is that the banks and financial institutions take appropriate measures to perform the customer due diligence, to perform the know your customer practices, monitor the transactions of customers, investigate the suspicious transactions and activities, and finally report the suspicious transactions to the regulatory authorities. So, AML-CFT requires institutions to implement relevant policies and procedures where every customer is required to be identified and verified before opening their account. And the banks and similar institutions are required to perform different measures to screen their names from different negative lists like the Office of Foreign Asset Control list or the OFAC list, which is issued by the FinCEN, which is the United States regulatory authority. And then the banks and institutions also perform different checks like the negative media checks, social media checks, etc., to ensure that the customer is a legitimate customer and is not involved in any criminal activity such as money laundering or terrorist financing. So, another requirement of the AML-CFT related laws and regulation is to perform the monitoring of the transactions and activities of customers, especially the high-risk customers such as politically exposed persons, based on the relevant thresholds that are mapped by the bank with the accounts of such customers. And the purpose of developing the transaction threshold for the customers is to ensure that the customers transactions must be limited, must be brought, or you can say the transactions of the customers are given or assigned some financial limits which should not be breached by the customers while performing their financial transactions. So if the breach occurs, then the red alert or pop-up will be generated by the AML system, and then the compliance team would monitor or would review or investigate those alerts, and in case any suspicious transaction is identified, then the appropriate investigation would be performed, and those transactions would then be reported to the regulatory authority. Now let's move on to the next type of laws and regulations. We are basically discussing the overview. So just to give you the understanding of different laws and regulations. Now we have the data protection law and regulation. Data protection related laws and regulations are very significant types of laws and regulations that financial institutions must understand and implement within the institution to ensure that the data access rights mechanism is developed and implemented so that only authorized personnel within the organization would be able to access the confidential information, either the customer's information or the institution's own internal information. So the data access rights are developed, and then the data protection related laws and regulations requires banks or institutions to take appropriate measures to prevent the instances of data breaches. Data breaches might occur in different forms like if the cyber attack is occurred and the network is hijacked by the criminals, then they will demand the ransom money, or they might steal the data and use the data of the customers of the institution for selling purposes on different, you can say, dark webs or in the negative markets, which would cause different kinds of other criminal activities. So the data protection related laws and regulations require institutions to take appropriate measures and implement relevant controls to ensure that the data, which is the confidential data, is not breached. Further, the laws and regulations require the implementation of appropriate technology related processes so that the data during the transfer from one network to the another, or from one location, you can say, to another, is secured. You might have heard about the encryption of the data, where the data is encrypted when transferred over the server, or if the data is transferred from one, you can say, jurisdiction to another, or from one financial channel to another financial channel, then the data must be encrypted so that unauthorized users might not access, or if the data is accessed, then they might not understand the data, because the data is kept hidden by the institution, so that the data during the transfer is secured. Further, data protection laws and regulations require institutions to take appropriate measures for data sharing amongst the employees or the relevant stakeholders, and it must be understood by the institutions that data must be shared between the authorized personnel only. Then, obviously, data loss prevention and investigations related provisions are also laid down in different data protection laws and regulations. So, this was the overall view of the data protection laws and regulations, and this is one of the kinds of laws and regulations, or types of laws and regulations, that we are discussing. I would again request you to please subscribe this channel, and on this channel we are uploading governance, risk management, and compliance related conceptual videos for educational purposes. And I thank you very much for watching this video, and we will meet in the next video. Thank you.